So when I was 12, I was actually visiting at the Nieuwe Kerk in Amsterdam, visiting for the first time exhibition of Cobra artists. And I had been all my life, since I was 4 or 5, I've been always drawing. I could not stop drawing. And I had like a book of Rien Poortvliet, some Dutch people might remember, is not a very popular illustration artist nowadays, but I've been redrawing for years his images to perfection. That was my idea. And then I enter into a Cobra world where I don't even know the movement, so abstract, very primitive. And for me, it was like, what is this? I mean, what can they even paint? Because it's very rudimentary forms. Like, what do they intend to say? I don't get it, you know. And so, and it was actually one person was very kind to help me and explain me actually what I found most mind-boggling was the role of the invention of the paint tube in the evolution of art. And why I want to talk to you today about AI is because I think that AI in health will have the role in as the paint tube had in art. More about that at the end of my story. So I think a lot was said already, and it's very difficult to see what profile people I have in the room. Are there people here that use AI on a daily basis? And people that use deep learning? Okay. And at the core of what you do, or yeah, good stuff. Thank you. But it's good to understand because I think first, it's good to understand very simply. So cancer is caused by aberrations of DNA, basically, so DNA multiplies normally, and then at the end it can form a cancer cell. And every day, actually, when we stand too long in the sun, every day there are cancer cells, and normally the body will solve it, right? But at some point it can become a tumor. It's also good to understand that when there's a tumor, both tumor cells, but also cell-free DNA can be emitted in the blood. And that's an important concept. And I think identifying these anomalies are super important, or can help actually to identify and to do that in a non-invasive way. Because nowadays, a lot of times, of course, if you really want to know, you can take a tumor sample and then you can look at that and analyze it. And that's very, then you look clearly at date of the tumor and of the cancer. But when you have blood, you don't know what you look at. Yeah? It's a few concepts, and sorry to go back to the basics, but I've discovered myself I had to relearn some stuff based on the recent evolution. So our vision is that in the end, we think that any person can go frequently or periodically to a nearby point of care, draw a vial of blood, and within a day know, do I have cancer, which cancer do I have, and what would be the treatment required. Yeah? In our company, we have a few different things that we do, both a cancer vaccine, but also we do predictive oncology. For example, for women's cancers, we predict based on the tumor what type of chemo would actually be effective and how much would be needed. Today I talk about our Cube, Amsterdam venue, which is really diagnostics and preferably early diagnostics. So the idea is someone visits a doctor, draws the blood, and in the end gets back the results, and we can determine the treatment based on that. Where are we now? Well, good to say that our company exists for a long time already, so that's always as a startup a bit of a thing. But we had to reinvent ourselves, and I'll share a bit more about our learnings and what we have had to change to keep up to speed, and to also make sure each time for each new generation of technology to actually embrace it and move forward further, because there have been so much evolutions. We started initially in this segment by extracting biomarkers from large samples. Biobanks were mentioned. You can get quite high quality data from there and do analysis and use machine learning to understand which biomarkers are relevant for which type of cancer, so that you develop a model, and then you can, of course, later on look in blood to see, can we find that, right? That's a basic start. We did see, though, that there are some limitations to the previous generation blood sequencing, and I'll come back to that later. So we have actually shifted our way of operating and engaging also with deep learning in the way that we actually scan the files. I'll go into that more deeply. We recently at least were granted Eureka Eurostars grant together with Uppsala University to look at lung cancer recurrence and to develop adequate monitoring of lung cancer. As a startup, it's very tough because you need to pick a place where there's some actual thing to be done, a problem to be solved, but also there's not too many people that mind and will go against you. For example, if we detect early what is needed and we can reduce chemo, not everyone will benefit from that, right? There are some businesses that will not per se like it, and also you will have competitors in every space. So that's a tricky thing. Next steps would typically be large-scale testing. We're busy working now with different medical centers on different projects to actually make sure we get to the next level of samples. The toughest thing is for us is, in a way, currently not to calculate, but it is to make sure that we get enough samples in the right clinical context, understanding how to compare them with people that do not have cancer, having the same type of digital extracts and files, so that it's actually apples with apples in some way or form, or if it's apple with pears, to correct the apple to be compared to be like a pear, and then compare the pear with the pear. And in the end, the idea is also that we will introduce the platform to a larger purpose, but we're not there yet. Now, it was talked about today already, like what changed and what have we seen that has changed. So first, let's start on the right-hand side, whole genome sequencing. I think it's good to understand that a lot of the biomarker intelligence until relatively recently has been built on methods that were actually taking 600 or 460,000 biomarkers from a string of 3 billion. Yeah. So that's 0.001%, right? So that's great, and you can look for signals in that, but it's like having, if you imagine a treasure map and having 0.001% of the treasure map. That's great, but it is limited, and what we've seen also when we use the information from that, we saw that actually applying it is very difficult to get the high-level accuracy. And we see a lot of people that say they have the accuracy because and there's different ways to build your own accuracy, to be honest, we have seen. But at least on our side, we have Adam with us. He's our head of AI engineer. We try to make sure that we really focused on, their puristic view of what do we see, how much can we detect, and how much can we also predict in samples. So you can imagine that we nowadays, with a whole genome, you go to a 500 gigabyte file with a full length of DNA and with multiple levels, which gives a massive, larger data set to look at. But then it's 500 gigabyte per blood sample. It's quite a bit. So then look at compute power. Yes, there is a massive evolution in compute power. So where in our previous model, we did quite a lot of noise reduction to make sure that we could reduce things we were looking at to manageable size and data points. We're, of course, now with compute power, we can do way faster and larger computations. It also allows, with advanced deep learning, allows a different way of looking at it. We ourselves looking at a transformator architecture, where we can actually make sure that the deep learning doesn't look at specific parts, but as a whole, and to all the signals in the file, and basically start seeing patterns that we haven't seen before. And so what is important in that, and I'm afraid you might not see all the details there, but so what does it bring us? Well, the deep learning itself, we see now, brings way different patterns and way deeper, and it has different challenges because the computer will actually walk through all those files, come back with patterns, and then we can ask it also to reproduce it with machine learning and into prediction mode and see, does it really then predict also the outcome? And then we will do multiple iterations. Where initial runs would take 23 hours, for us now that in cases we have reproduced, we've seen like 30, 40 minutes is way faster that we estimate we can do this towards the future. But it is important, and it actually builds a different layered view of patterns. So it will look at all the patterns in every layer of every omic layer and combines those and look at that as a whole. What I said, there is a challenge because we don't always directly know with deep learning, because it's a black box approach. We don't know what is it actually that it's returning. It can be combinations that are for us far away from the current thinking of looking at biomarkers. So it means that at the same time our team looks at how can we reconstruct what it has done, and then can we come in ways to understand the algorithm. And in the end, fortunately, we're in the diagnostic space, so that doesn't mean that we always need to exactly explain how it works, but we have to show a massive, impressive accuracy. That's mainly. And then in the end, when reproducing that in sufficient clinical trials, that should be sufficient to launch the diagnostics. Now, we work on several things at the moment, and I think it's also sometimes, it's a pretty special to run a project like this, because first of all, as I said, it's rare for us to find the right blood sample material in the right clinical context. So, for example, there's currently one study in preparation from 2 medical centers in the Netherlands. They want to look at lung cancer recurrence. And then, that's it's already set up to compare the golden standard of CT scan, PET scan, and then we try to add blood sample monitoring. So, and the good news is with if you have lung cancer, then basically you see often it gets treated, so operated, and then normally it has to be tested, is it gone or not? And you will see that, and this is mainly done visually, which is a very, if you see it, you're late. Let's put it that way in that context. So what we can do with the non-invasive blood samples, we can actually monitor and say 4 months after treatment, and etc. And so we can see actually for the patient, how is the patient levels, how are they evolving in the blood of the patient. And therefore we can help the oncologist to actually make more accurate decisions in how to stop and continue the treatment, right? There's another thing, and maybe go through for one project, we're quite busy. So the initial is, I think like many startups, we've had many challenges in the last months, but that's the life of a startup, and it's quite challenging in a market where we are, and with everything happening, and where sometimes things are hot and sometimes things are all of a sudden not. But for us, I think what we try to is, I think 51% of the Dutch startups focuses on the wrong thing at the wrong time. And I think in a way we have done that in the past too, saying, okay, too much product focus and trying to think like if we have the perfect product, then we can go to people and it starts to work. But we have underestimated that we need to find the oncologists that are comfortable using this technology in the end. Only then it will be applied, because they have to make everyday choices based on many data. It's a bit also, I think, the point you were saying is like, and it's easy to say I have a tool, but someone has to use it. So initially we want to really make sure we have a use case with a clear owner. So we are currently working on glioblastoma, which is normally brain surgery, but it's very difficult after the operation to actually on a visual to see whether is there regression or is it just sort of pseudo, a tumor happening. And there are already some analytics using blood platelets, but we are now working actually with that team to see with our newest deep, and they use actually traditional machine learning based on the insights that are already there on biomarkers. But that is limited by what has been done with previous way of science, right? It's people that have for ages been looking at biomarkers, trying to find one by one, what does each biomarker mean, et cetera, et cetera. So all of a sudden what you can do is biomarkers is nice, but what if we run deep learning? Because you have so many samples, and see whether the deep learning can bring additional quality and accuracy to your view of the tumor. Then if we have first is the problem, of course, and then, of course, making sure that you both have clear what the currently is there, etc. 5 minutes, yeah. The use case, in this case, the look at exactly what we're going to do. And then in general, of course, you need to define a project together because typically there's a lot of things that need to happen. Of course, you need data agreements in place because it's medical records of patients. Some data might be already sort of ready to make public, but others that you really want to collect everything. So you rather have, in this case, we wanted also MRI, but MRI had not all been collected with the right type of consent of the patients. So you have to work together to see like, okay, what is the exact amount of data that we can get? We want to really massively get all the data in there so that we can bring them all in our transformer architecture and make sure the deep learning can really work on it. That's quite challenging, to be honest, and requires a lot of work, term sheets, legal review, etc., which typically our AI people don't have the patience for. They just want to get going, but it is important. And then in the end, we develop together, and also we need to look at the environment in which we do it, for which I think a cloud that is certified for medical use is very important. And that's also why we reached out to enable to work together and make sure that not only on our data side and our own architecture we comply with the regulation, but also the environment on which it will run will actually comply with the same level of restrictions. Now, no, it's the end of time, almost. So I thought parallel now with the paint tube. What many people don't know, and I'm an artist, you have to know, so I'm still working on art and exhibiting. But I thought to ask AI to generate a painting of a tube and also checked if it's intellectual property, if I can use it without infringing any rights, by the way. But I think it's funny, like initially artists started with the limitations of their atelier. They had to work in the atelier because paint had to be made there, often by an assistant, and then it had to be used basically, and that's where you did it, right? They had predefined composition, light always in the center, object in the center of the center, and then predefined choreography for battleship pictures or portraits, etc., right? That's how that started. And also the meaning was really through basic agreement on what there were basic symbols in there, like a dog would symbolize something, and loyalty and other things would symbolize other things. It was great. And then the tube was invented, and all of a sudden artists started to go out, paint outside, and they had to work fast. And there we got Impressionism. And then they thought, hey, but that's interesting. Now, through my expression, actually, I can express more what I want. We got Expressionism. It's simplified, of course, but I mean, in the end, this was a massive change in the, in finding new ways of art and also shifting conceptual art to new type of concepts and make concepts that are meaningful for the journey of the artist. I think the same can apply to AI. I think we need to really, at the heart of what we do, and we have to do that also because all the technologies evolve. So we're now at a phase that we shouldn't allow our limitations of thinking and of the past science limit the potential of the future. So we should leave predefined compositions and allow the deep learning also to make more insights and learn better than we did in the past, and learn probably from the AI how it learns, and then be able to apply, and also make sure that the concepts we have are not limited. I mean, typically a person and mankind has a way of defining the problem at the level it can see or register things. And you have to see that's a limitation, basically. It's a limitation of what we can do. And so I think that's where, at least on our side, we try to bring the newest form of learning. Is that easy? No, it's not. Super hard work. Our team is busy. We're many challenges in many areas. But what we see now is good results, working with quite some medical centers like Uppsala and also in Amsterdam. And we're excited about it. And the team is moving full speed ahead. So that's it.
Maurice? We can take one or two questions.
One question about the vial of blood. Do you have to receive that into your laboratory, or can a third-party laboratory analyze it and give you the data?
Yeah, so it's by itself, I think it's important beforehand that we agree on what type of sequencing is happening. And it depends a bit on the technology and the type of thing you sequence. So we've seen for blood platelets, for example, that sometimes when we first look at when the first algorithms run on it, sometimes it detects differences in where it has been collected and sampled. So you have to be mindful for the biases in your data there. So typically we would look at as much as possible comparable. Also with the evolutions of sequencing, it means that you have to really be aware which version of the sequencing of a certain producer you're using, and see that you actually adjust for it, or that you make sure you don't take that into the bias of your research.
Right. We should speak more because we're working on something in parallel. Maybe we could help.
Yeah, and to be honest too, Adam, who's here, Adam Vender, he's our top AI engineer. So for the real technical questions, you can go to him. Yeah, so I just want to make sure. So, okay. Yeah.
I heard you saying, I think, non-invasive blood sampling.
Yeah, okay, sorry, yeah, okay. That's it. Of course, it's sort of invasive. It's as little as invasive as possible. I mean, compared to tumor...
Microneedles.
Yeah, but that's it. But, indeed, it's not fully non-invasive. Yeah.
Hey, Maurice, thank you very much. Really appreciate you attending today.
Happily.
Good up, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Today's we'll introduce Nima Salami from OASYS now, CEO and co-founder. A few months ago, you guys probably saw him on LinkedIn. I think it was hard to miss that out of many, how many? 1,000. Out of 1,000 or more AI startups, he won a really impressive Slush 100 award, which also comes with a nice a piece of funding for your company. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Nima.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I'm really happy to be here with such a great panel of speakers. I really see the connection of how everybody from their point of angle are working towards better patient outcomes. Our point of view is towards patient empowerment with their control and ownership of their own data. Our first focus is on clinical trials. So we are at OASYS now the Europe's first AI-powered and real-world data-driven clinical trial recruitment. And that is fully certified. That can actually do this from the electronic health records. We can identify which patients are matched to which clinical trials and vice versa. And what makes us really stand apart is in our unique approach to building everything privacy by design. All of us are cybersecurity nerds in our company. We go about doing everything privacy by design. We build everything patient first. We make sure for every product that we build, for every B2B organization, there is a patient interface where they can receive transparent information about what's going on with their data, with the process they're going through. And as a young startup, we have the privilege of building everything AI native. So we don't have to retrofittingly add AI to our existing solution, but actually build everything with AI at the core. And by doing everything fully certified and privacy by design, we make sure everything is done in a manner that is compliant to all the regulations. We have won European Cybersecurity Award, Netherlands Privacy Award, to basically showcase how we approach this differently. But a little bit about why we do this. I always like to share why I started doing this. So I have a computer science background from TU Delft, and what really made me go out of my comfort zone of just sitting in love with the code and the technology and go to the healthcare field was I was trying to help my own mom. She has several chronic diseases and a rare disease, and she's been suffering from that for many years. And as refugees, we had to travel from country to country several times. And every time we were in a new country, my mom didn't have access to her own medical records to show her diagnosis and get the medicine she's been using for years. So she had to get re-diagnosed every time we were in a new country. And this re-diagnosis could take sometimes months. In case of her asthma, took more than a year. So she didn't have her asthma medicine for more than a year. Just because she didn't have her medical records with her. And to me, as a computer science nerd, that didn't make any sense. Like, we have almost all of our data on the interwebs if we want. It was like peak Facebook time when I started working on this. I was like, we are putting everything on the internet. Somehow our health data is not available to us. Just didn't compute. No pun intended. So I went to this problem thinking about the information of my mom's disease and her health data must be somewhere. The information about all of the medicines and clinical guidelines and research input is also somewhere else. To me, it just seemed like a matching problem, right? If I build an algorithm that does the matching, I can find the best treatments for my mom, because no doctor had the time to be constantly on the search of what new treatment option is going to be fit for my mom's rare diseases. So that's sort of my background story. That sort of made me to believe that if we build a win-win-win data infrastructure, we can enable all stakeholders to actually interact with each other using this platform. So we want to be the data governance layer that connects different stakeholders together. That being said, I soon learned you can't build the infrastructure to sell as a startup. Nobody sells infra from a startup. So we decided to sort of pivot, or like zoom in, pivot, and choose a certain problem we can solve first for a group of stakeholders, and then from that start unlocking data and build a platform in the background. So I went to this problem from the point of view of patients. And for my co-founder, Sarah Okhauze, this was the other way around, from the point of view of the end users of the data. So she was working at one of the most renowned research institutes in the world, Erasmus Medical Center, working on cutting-edge science on Alzheimer and aging disease. And she didn't have access to the data to actually conduct her research for months. But the data was somewhere. So she came to this problem from the point of view of how do we make this data more accessible to the researchers. And her unique background in combining genomics and privacy, being one of the very few genomic privacy researchers in the world, enabled us to build one of the first solutions that can help hospitals and organizations worldwide to collaborate with each other to do genomic studies using deep learning. That was in collaboration with NVIDIA, actually, that we built a security layer on top of that. So that's sort of how the story of our company began. What are we doing today? Like the clinical trial part, probably a lot of people in the room are more familiar with it even than I am, right? I'm coming from a computer science background, but soon I learned that 85% of all of these trials are canceled or delayed due to the specific problem of finding patients in time, right? So the patients are there, the trial is ready, but just the finding part takes so much time. And it's costing pharmaceutical companies upwards of $8 million per every single day of delay, right? Because they get a patent, and by the time that the patent expires, they have to go to market as soon as possible. But this is also an operational nightmare for the trial sites. So the hospitals who have to run these trials, or clinics, 2/3 of them actually fail to meet the original patient recruitment timelines, right? So it's taking them on average 13 months to find patients from their own databases. So the patient is there, the information of the patient is in a database. To be able to actually find if those patients are matched to the trial that is running at the hospital takes them average 13 months. Why? Because it's actually a manual process in most cases. They actually hold in one hand the clinical trial protocol and all the eligibility criteria that a patient needs to be matched, and they scroll through electronic health records for hours. Not a fun job to do at all. That's why it takes so much time. But why is that? Why do they have to do it manually? Well, it's because clinical notes, the electronic health records, are per definition unstructured information, right? So far, up until recently, we have not been able to actually fully utilize that data. So most of the relevant information about a patient's story is written in form of a story. It's not in an Excel sheet that you can like quickly run SQL or those kind of approaches. So This was an untapped and unlocked problem for many years. And now, as we all sitting in the room know, this is a different era, right? So large language models are to the rescue, because for the first time ever, we can actually do something with this data. So it's relatively simple. This AI-powered precision matching uses all the medical guidelines and the medical knowledge that is out there. We combine it with all the past clinical trials that have taken place, the protocols, how they have performed, and the patient data. Using that, we can create an automated eligibility screening, right? So instead of going through all the thousands of patients you have in your hospital, we provide you the list, an ordered list of which patients are most likely to be actually matched, right? So it is that matching problem after all. However, to emphasize this, as we all know here, this is not just any data, this is electronic health record. This is one of the most sensitive data that we have, right? And surprisingly, already 90% of European citizens have some form of electronic health records, right? That's 400 million people's data that is available to be used to actually help them. And it's the healthcare institutes that are desperate for these AI-powered solutions, right? They are aware of this problem. But since this is a very sensitive data, the implementation of it in a privacy-first approach has been a huge challenge for many organizations. You can't just build an OpenAI ChatGPT wrapper and connect it to the electronic health record of a hospital. You have to think about how to do this on-premise and all of the compliance challenges. And that's actually where we shine. So as a cybersecurity firm, this was for us the sort of bread and butter of building these AI solutions fitted for the healthcare and life science sector. This is the part that I get nerdy about, but I'll try my best to not to bore you with the details. But what I want you to remember from this slide is that we build everything compliant by design, right? So we have a sophisticated series of technologies, so not just the AI part, but all the privacy enhancing technologies that we enable to unlock this real world data and the regulatory roadblocks that is stopping them from actually being utilized for secondary purposes. Right, so just to recap, we had the patient data, we had the AI that matches them to clinical trials and real-world evidence. But what happens here is sort of basically our secret sauce, where we can do an on-premise de-identification, right? So before any other model is implemented, we first de-identify, anonymize, pseudonymize the data on premises before it leaves the hospitals. Next, we have an anonymized active linkage solution where it can create a holistic patient profiles from all of the databases that are available of the patient, right? If you have to think about the EHR systems, it's not just one database that contains all of the information. There's multiple databases over different locations. Data is stored in so many different formats. So actually structuring this data and making it gathered around one patient, that's sort of where we shine and basically structure the data too. So it's usable for secondary use cases. And we do this by making longitudinal patient records and enabling the individuals themselves that if they want, they can take action and actually claim their own data. And thanks to GDPR, now we have that human rights to actually claim our data. So we help healthcare organizations be able to actually enforce and implement GDPR solutions in their own organizations. Well, lastly, our proprietary cryptographic technology enables this connection of databases over multiple institutes without actually having to move the data. So you can learn from patient, you can run your models over multiple organizations without actually having to move the data around. And that's sort of another area that we got a European award for our technology in collaboration with NVIDIA. I tried to not make it too nerdy. I still did it, I think. So how does it look like in form of a software, right? Like all of that conversation, to put it in one application, it's an interface for the clinical research nurses or PIs that are actually looking for patients from their own patient cohorts, from their own hospitals, right? So they can upload their protocols, the protocols that they have. They don't have to write it in SQL queries. They don't have to do any programming. They just upload a protocol. We can make sense of that and make a search query that then goes into the patient files. And then they are provided with a sort of criteria by criteria explanation, whether this patient actually meets that criteria, yes or no. Why do the patient meet it, right? So an explanation. So it's not just a black box. It's an explainable AI. And the source, so the citation of where in the patient file it was found. So all the doctor needs to do, just verify this information. It's the doctor's job to actually finally make the call, right? So it's not a clinical decision tool, it's a clinical decision support system. And further, the researchers can provide feedback how the model perform, and that gets fed back to the model and improves the model so you can learn from the actual doctors as they're operating with the system. This helps with providing patients that are already above 90% matching score. So instead of going through hundreds of thousands of patients, you start with the top 10 or top 20 that you were actually looking for. And this helps life science organizations like pharmaceutical companies and contract research organizations to actually know which hospitals they can work with. Is the patient actually available in that hospital that I'm going to select as a trial site or not, right? So it's a multi-stakeholder solution. So where we are standing right now, we're already live at multiple sites here in the Netherlands, and we have already matched hundreds of patients with above 90% accuracy in matters of minutes instead of it taking years. We signed an agreement with the electronic health record provider of 54 hospitals that helps us actually put our solution into the EHR. So for the future hospitals, they can start using our platform literally with a click of a button inside the interface that they're already familiar with. So that also helps speed up our sales cycles. And lastly, another part that I'm personally proud of, this is our proprietary cryptography technology. This is a novel confidential federated learning solution that was validated, and Google reached out to us and they want to work with us to further develop this solution. This is the A-Star team that I'm really proud of, very multidisciplinary. So we have Sarah from bioinformatics, nanobiology, and genomic privacy background, who's our CTO. Hanneke with 30 years of experience in clinical trials. She has run a clinical trial matching recruitment before herself without the technology. So basically now we're enabling her to also reach her dreams. Cybersecurity, privacy, and AI engineers, and I call her a Swiss Army knife of everything legal, from contract to IB to data privacy. But we're also surrounded by sort of the gray hair people who have been in this industry for long, from executive board members of Philips to the largest data privacy firm of Europe. And with that, this is helping us reach the vision we have had for this company from the get-go, because we want to make personalized health accessible and equitable for everyone globally. What we mean by that is the world of precision medicine and personalized medicine has been more or less predominantly at the research side or available only to a few who actually can afford having that. We want to make that accessible, and we want to make it equitable, meaning that we want to bring these solutions to people worldwide so that every people group are represented in the data sets that are used to actually create these models. So that's sort of the background story of OASYS. Now, if you have any questions, more than happy to answer them.
You have any questions? That was really, really interesting. Thank you. Thank you. You covered everything and very efficiently. I think also like for that presenting it.
To just preach it at least 200 times over the past years.
That was most efficient presentations I've seen. So thank you very much, Nima. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you, Nibble, for having us. It's a pleasure to work with Europe-based cloud and data centers that actually enables building sovereign AI for prioritizing Europe.
That's great. That's exactly why we're here. Hopefully that message gets across. So we had two more short presentations, and then we have I think 10 or 15 minutes of the wrap up. That is great. So appreciate you. Had two more speakers. We have Nima. We have Jan-Marc Verlinden, the manager director at HealthTalk, and I'll hand it over to you, Jan-Marc. Go ahead.
Thanks a lot. We are a Dutch-based company, and my life is actually quite simple. I was born and raised 500 meters behind me. I couldn't see the house, but it's really there. My first company in healthcare was in the building over there, and our current company is over there at the other side of the street. So that makes it quite interesting, I think. We were founded in, we have a management buy-in earlier this year. Sander, Dick joined us. We have 25 people, mainly in all over Europe, an office in Ankara, and at the moment 6 people right here in the Netherlands. For companies, actually quite similar to the previous speaker, we started with the eHealth company, an eHealth platform. We were founded in 2017, and we developed a completely standardized electronic health record system. I truly believe in standardization, so we started standardized straightforward, and with that platform, we're connected to all 8,400 Dutch healthcare institutes. The second company, so we use the platform to build new spin-off companies. The second one is a Dutch personal health environment, PGO. Is not really like a great concept, but indeed with our app you can connect to your general practitioner or your doctor or your healthcare institute and get your own clinical data in. It works within the boundaries of the Netherlands. The third one is really interesting. After 25 years of doing innovations in healthcare, lesser days in the hospital, lesser medication, quicker, faster, lesser people working on it, with a lifestyle intervention for diabetes type 2. Actually, within a month or two, most diabetes type 2 patients are able to get rid of all the medication. I found it most interesting. But I'm going to talk about HealthTalk today, on the right side for you. We use LLMs. We don't develop AI or vision models ourselves like the previous speakers, but we use them to develop AI for the healthcare. I'm going to give you a little bit of a high-over. I'm not going to go into technical details. I hope not. But what you see, how we focus on mental care, because we believe that if you can do mental care, you can do the most complex conversations. And we actually do the speech-to-text to automated reporting in there for now. Administration in healthcare takes up to, normally you state between 30 and 60%, but we can easily use the 50% number. And what you also see is that for most healthcare providers, especially if you have a 1-hour talk, doing the reporting in B1 language for the client, for the patient, or for your colleague is also interesting and challenging for most of the healthcare providers. That's challenge 1. Challenge 2, the AI Act. The fine balance between the law, the GDPR, the different laws on there, and it's also not in balance, and your innovation, because it's really hindering, of course. Hindering. I think it's a good one, but it is challenging. As from day one on, we were ISO and NEN certified. So after 7 years of being certified, I think that's a good step, but we want to go into the next step. I think AI models, like presented also today, should be Class 2 medical device certified. So that's also our aim within this year, to be Class 2B certified as a medical device. You can see it here. I think if you look at the picture, I don't know if you can read the text, but you have minimal risk, limited risk, high risk, and unacceptable risk. This is normally how you look at medical device regulations. By default, if you look at medical data, you fall into the high risk. That means that you have to be certified as a medical device at some point. But there's some more boundaries in there. Another challenge number 3, I think NVIDIA also explained it nicely, but some of the other presenters as well. At some point, if you use ChatGPT or OpenAI, it looks more like a multiple guess than a particular outcome. And you really have to take that into account, especially if you look at questionnaires and roles. These are 2 aspects. The first one, questionnaires. If you ask in healthcare, you have those PROMs, patient-reported outcome measurements. So each doctor will do a questionnaire with you, and the outcome is a clinical status. If you ask an LLM to do that, if you go to ChatGPT, it says, yes, I could certainly do it. The outcome is in 50% of the cases right. And the LLM is smart enough to upgrade that a little bit and to hide it and to go to 71%. 74, sorry. But it is unacceptable. This is not acceptable. And the same with roles. If you have a conversation with multiple speakers, it will actually guess who is the doctor. This means that if you have a family situation and you have father, child, and mother, and the father stating to the child, not being the doctor, the father stating to the child, you have HDAD or you have a broken leg, to keep it simple, the outcome will be in the reporting that the LLM will state the doctor stated that the patient has HDAD. And this is crucial, of course, and you cannot have that. So these are the challenges we were facing. For efficiency, you see in the mental care, you have a 60-minute talk. It's a one-on-one talk. It could be with the entire family. It could be with friends, with relatives. And you need another 2 hours of reporting. That's how it works at the current state. At some times, we had some discussions. People sit there the healthcare provider sit there with 2 persons within the talk, and then the one does the typing and the other one does the talking, of course, but it's not very efficient. We think if you use a generic LLM model, you can save a little bit. Unfortunately, that part is gone due to the sun, but you can save more and more, of course. This needs some small steps, but in the end, you can save, I think, about half of it to be quicker. At the moment, we can already save like 25% from those second 2 hours to it. So the proof of the pudding is in the eating. How does it look like? This is a conversation of 55 minutes. I just took like 2 minutes. I will scroll a little bit into it. But here you see the conversation between 3 persons. A healthcare provider, a patient, a client who has eating disorder, and actually it is me who's stopping the conversation and then stating I am the father of the patient, to keep it, to have multiple people in there. It's recording between 2 doctors, to be honest, but so that's why I can also show it. The audio is not working, apparently, but the video also not, I think. Let me check. Yeah, it is running. So you can see the conversation. Sorry. And actually what we did here, we explained the conversation for the healthcare provider. So either you have an intake, you have a progress talk, you have a diagnostic talk, and these are all fixed formats. So you have different questions in there. Ask the patient about the family situation. Ask the patient about current medication. And what we do in here is we have several models. The one is checkboxing all the answers and questions, the questions and answers, of course. So is this asked, yes or no? So easily at the end of the conversation, you could check, is everything being asked? Could the patient go home? And could we hit the button, stop the conversation? That is going to happen in a moment. Let me scroll it a little bit. So here you can actually see more and more green buttons. If you can see it in the sun, now the conversation is at the end. So the report is being generated. We have a little bit more sophisticated algorithm, AI model behind it, because in here we do the diarization first. So we listen to the voice of the persons. So in here we have 100% accuracy about who says what. And then secondly, we go for the automated report. But then it states, for instance, last week we had a kickoff, and then one of the healthcare providers said she had a conversation with the family, a daughter, a child, a father and a mother, and the child was actually not participating in the conversation. So it was, the whole conversation was an hour and a half, and she found out that the actual client, the patient, talked for like 5 minutes, just stating yes and no. And then the AI model, our model stated, the client is not participating actively, and at each question, the father or the mother is answering. And that's actually quite interesting. A normal LLM model can absolutely not do that. Here you can see the same result. So we look at the sections within the conversation, and you have the sections like medication, mania, depression, eating disorder, eating habits. And that's actually in all the organizations pretty much the same. The only difference in here, what you see is that you have a different order. Either you have HTAD, you have eating disorder, you have and that differs a little bit in the templating model. What I found interesting is that I saw some really nice examples today, especially starting with NVIDIA. But why isn't it? It looks like the entire healthcare is actually using them, but this is not the case. We are really at the first steps, and we really have to overcome some of the boundaries before we can actually start. AI didn't start with ChatGPT, with OpenAI. It started in 1955, and we have the first winters already. And I think it's really good to look back a little bit to what happened actually. So we had the chess computer, we had we had deep blue learning, of course. We had IBM Watson. What happened there? Right? So I think we are really in the next summer, AI summer, but the next winter is really on there. I think a year and a half ago the hype started, but we will come back to the moment that we actually see, okay, but how can we now use it? And most importantly, and I think that's what we have to learn from, where did IBM Watson go? But if we state that AI could replace the equivalent of 300 million people, then for sure we're not going to get there. So I think it's important that we all realize that we actually talk about change management here. We really have in healthcare to change the way of the people work. This is not about AI. This is not about just a tool. I think for all of the startups, this is quite an important step. Well, this is a picture which I nicely stole from Label's presentation. Thanks a lot. What you see in here, we also have our own stack. And of course, the stack is sitting here, Label, NVIDIA, it's all the same. So I didn't want to go too much into detail. But for me, if I use DeepSeek or Gemini or, any of the others, OpenAI, it's all the same. We cannot use it in healthcare. Besides the fact that, for instance, DeepSeek is open source. So for sure, we're going to use it. But we're going to use it in your own stack, similar to what NVIDIA and Label are saying. Another one, also stolen proudly, but I will skip it because it was presented earlier already. We provide our own models. We didn't develop AI models, that's for sure. Like one of the previous presenters do, we just add a little bit to it. That's it, and we take the right ones. But for me, the next year is going to be quite important. So, what you add for healthcare especially, we want to overcome the black box. I think if you look properly at the AI Act, you cannot deliver a black box. So, as a company, we would like to deploy the model, make sure that it actually runs and that it performs and that it's being checked. But the healthcare provider should give us the insights. So the healthcare provider should state, okay, this report is really looking nice. This is correct according to my specialism. We are just developers. We have no clue about the medical field. These are the first steps. I think we're getting a hold of it, but it's quite a step forward, and the end result should be the medical device class 2B. Slightly on the technical side, we also provide everything as an API. So what we are trying to do, again, I'm stating a little bit the same there. We have a wrapper around the EHR. I think the days of the common EHR are counted. I think they're not longer there within a year or two. You will actually, as a healthcare provider, talk to your screen and state things, and the screen will make it happen. Yeah, and that's the next step for us, the agents. We want to provide an agent model where the healthcare provider could create their own agent, and actually behind it is a standardized model that could query your patient model, the electronic health record system, and based on that, develop your own model. What we're doing at the moment, we have a pilot running at lifestyle intervention locations, 50 of them, and they're actually, the healthcare provider provides their lifestyle input into a content management system. We are reading that. We're reading the goals and the tasks of the patients together with maybe take medication at 11 o'clock. And combined with that, we give a daily advice with a combination of the data that has been put in by the clinical expert, by the lifestyle intervention expert. Yeah, and then it looks simply at the front-end side as a person talking to you. So that's the agent we've seen before, I think, in the previous presentations as well. I'm going to keep it at that quickly, but that's my presentation.
Thank you, Jan-Marc. I've been working with the team Delft Epoch. The Epoch is kind of like an A-team. Abish graduated here with different members. They exercise their AI skill by competing in global competition. But we're supposed to hear into with them last year was mapping this on a global scale from satellites to help preserve open oaks. And today they're going to talk by the way they won that competition out of 600 other competitors, universities, including Harvard, Stanford. Really amazing that they won. They were running on NVIDIA DGX. For those of you who know, NVIDIA DGX is the super high-end supercomputer on NVIDIA. And what we're going to hear today is Team Epoch, a few of the members, present on the latest competition that they won. They won again, and this is a really, really impressive one in the medical field. So, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Gaius Doucet, and I'm the PR manager of Team Epoch. And we are what he said, the AI dream team of the TU Delft. And our goal is to contribute to a positive AI development. So how do we do that? Now, we do that by participating in AI competitions or doing projects. And we're not a company, but we are a non-profit organization with all students. All our projects and competitions need to comply with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, because we also want to make an impact with our AI model. And our team consists of 18 students, all from the TU Delft. And we have a wide variety of different bachelors. So we have computer science students, applied physics, applied mathematics, but we also have industrial design. So we have a lot of students. And currently we're working on a project for the government, but I know we are here for healthcare and AI. So we go back to our first projects about malaria. So let we watch our introduction by a video. Yes, perfect.
Malaria, one of the world's deadliest diseases, and it all begins with just one bite. When an infected female Anopheles mosquito bites you, it does more than just leave an itchy mark. Each year, these mosquitoes put millions of people at risk. In 2022 alone, they affected 249 million people, leading to over 600,000 deaths. Africa is hit hardest, with 95 of all cases and 97 of deaths. The process of detecting malaria is simple. Get a blood sample from the patient. Put it under the microscope and observe. Easy, right? But here is the catch. Checking blood samples is tough. Imagine looking at 30 blood samples under a microscope every day. Let me tell you, that's a one-way ticket to major eye strain. So, what more can be done? What if we could give healthcare workers a powerful tool, something that helps them save more lives? This is where artificial intelligence can step in.
So our first project was about malaria. Now, what we already know, malaria is one of the deadliest animals in the world. There are approximately 600,000 deaths every year and 250 million cases every year. And approximately 95% of those cases are in Africa. And one thing you don't know, when we detect malaria in an early stage, we can prevent 50% of all those deaths. So that's where AI comes in. So when we know we can use AI for malaria, we chose to participate in a malaria detection challenge. This is a competition where we needed to create an AI model where you can detect if a person has malaria and how badly he or she is infected. So this competition is hosted by the Lacuna Fund on the Zindi platform. And this Lacuna Fund is an African fund. What I already told you, in Africa are the 95% of those cases are in Africa. The goal of this competition is because we know in Europe we have a lot of doctors, but in Africa they don't have that many doctors as we do. And the process, we want to improve the process of detecting malaria, because we can save more lives when you improve the process of detecting it. And also when you know how badly someone is infected with malaria, you can map out which people needs more attention from a doctor. And by that, we save more lives. So by improving the process and mapping out which patient need more attention by a doctor, we can save more lives. And here is where AI can make a really big deal. So the competition gave us a lot of data. And all this data were images of blood samples. And all these blood samples were infected blood samples or not infected blood samples. And we needed to create an AI model what's based on vision AI. So, but how do you detect malaria in a blood sample? How do you know that? Now, how do we detect malaria in a blood sample? Malaria has two big indicators. One is a trophozoite. A trophozoite is like kind of a head with some tails on it and a white blood cell. So if these two are in your blood sample, you know if there is malaria in your blood and you are infected. So we got for example, we got a blood sample like this, without all these blue and red bounding boxes. And we needed to create an AI model who could see if these purple dots were white blood cells. And that's when you see it with your own eye, it's really easy to see the white blood cells. But the trophozoites, on the other hand, you can see here, they are like, this is a good one with a head and a tail. You could see this one, but why is this isn't a trophozoite? So that's where AI also could help. So how now, and this is how we are working in the offices together to see if we see trophozoites and white blood cells. Now, I'm from the operation side. I will give more in perspective of an engineering side, and he will tell you more about our model, what we used for detecting all those blood samples.
Thank you, Gaius. So let me first introduce myself. I'm Maurice van Jan-Marc. I'm an applied physics student, and I'm part of the AI engineering team of Team Epoch. So with the training data set, you'd say like, well, you could jump the gun, right? Immediately start training. It is not that easy, unfortunately. Most of the data was pretty bad. The images were low quality. So we really needed to think about our EDA process. How can we refine this data into clean data that doesn't confuse our AI model? And then we can finally start training. So with that, we've thought of a lot of models. We used fast RCNN, faster RCNN, YOLO and Datter. Fortunately, some were good, some weren't good. Luckily, we also have some private and public test data, so that we can evaluate how good is our model really. And this takes time, because even if you take a top-of-the-shelf model, you still have hyperparameters to tune, and that can really boost your score. Unfortunately, that takes a lot of time, a lot of compute. We do have good GPUs, but thanks to the Nebula cluster, we really could run a lot more sweeps, and that gave us the winning edge to win this competition of around 700 participants. But what does the winning model look like? Do we just have like the best YOLO model available, or a Datter model, a really good alternative, or maybe a smaller but faster model? We've seen that all of these three models were good. But the thing that we've also seen is that the smaller YOLO and Datter could pinpoint more trophozoites than the YOLO alone, even though that they were giving a worse score. So what we end up in the end is an ensemble of all three of them, which in the beginning we thought it was a worse idea because it took a lot of GPU power. But yeah, thanks to the Nebula cluster, we could really fine tune it, and with the accuracy of 0.94, we really did win the competition and gave a good model. So what do we do with this model?
So we have a winning model. What do we do now? So we have an AI model. So the first thing we have contact with the Lacuna Fund who started the competition. We have now contact about the implementation of our AI model. And the second thing is we created a tool where we can use our own AI model for detecting malaria. So what do we need to use for our tool? Now, first we need a microscope. Secondly, we need a blood sample, and last we need a phone with a camera. So how it works, for example, I take blood out of my own, put it on a microscope, take a picture, and you could see how badly you're affected with malaria or you're not infected. Now, it looks like this. It's like a keychain with our logo, but with an NFC chip on it. And with the NFC chip, you will lead to our interface from our tool. Now, we can do a demo, but it always goes wrong. So I will show you just quickly here how it looks like. And here you can see like in blood sample. And here you could see like the trophozoites in the white blood cells, what I told you. And you can see this person is infected with malaria. So that's why normally you could put here your own picture, but that's not what you're going to. So that's how it works. And now we go back. So what else do we do? Now we do a lot more than just a malaria competition. We also have done a competition about predicting new medicines, classifying harm brain activity, and we did also mapping kelp forests. We also won thanks to Nebula and their clusters. We did a literacy screening, a cryo object identification, and we did a lot more. And currently we're working for a project about for the government, about the Open Government Act, about the WO verzoeken in Dutch. So that's also really nice to do now. But besides coding, we do also a lot of things. The government came in at our office, the Tweede Kamer. Abu Talib was there. We were at a lot of events, AI events, and we organized hackathons. Last month, at the end of February, we organized a hackathon with 120 students from the TU Delft, and the topic was the wildfires in LA. And at the end of May, we want to organize the biggest hackathon in the Netherlands with 750 people in Delft as well. So to finish our presentation, I will say the goals of Epoch again is to contribute to a positive AI development, to make impact with our AI models, inspiring students and the general public, growing AI innovation at the TU Delft, and of course, win more machine learning competitions. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, guys. That's fascinating. We will be sending out, where possible, all the slides to everybody afterwards. And of course, if anybody has any questions, we'll, of course, email you guys if you have any questions about any of the participants today or our capabilities in providing private AI or healthcare, but also other segments. We'd be really happy to have that chat with you. And with that, I want to thank everybody here, and especially thank Anna Maria for organizing the events. Was say she just couldn't control the sun, but we have to forgive her for that, right? So thank you very much. I think there's some drinks and snacks and whatever you guys want. We'll be happy to chat. I think at some point we get kicked out of the building here, but we're going to try to maximize that for those who want to stick around and ask some more questions. Thank you very much. Yeah.